I'd like to share an experience with you that I had when I was 17 years old and I was living in a meditation retreat center in India that had monks and other serious practitioners of yoga and meditation. I had gone there uh, the year before. I had joined up with an Indian guru to learn meditation, to find God, really to find enlightenment is what I was looking for. And I've already made a video about the first major experience I had when I was 16. It actually happened right on my 16th birthday, where I had a classical experience of merging with God, merging with a field of loving consciousness that fills the entire universe and interpenetrates all form and actually appears as all forms and all beings and all things. This one unifying principle of love, consciousness, goodness, perfection, all of these beautiful qualities, which I consider to be the highest level of reality in the universe, the unifying principle of the universe, and actually the true nature of all things, including you and me and this chair and the equipment I'm using to record this and all that stuff. So I had that experience on my 16th birthday, and it was a before and after moment where it changed my life, but it actually wasn't my highest experience uh, during my 3 years in the ashram. My highest experience came about a year later, where I experienced something that I would say is before God, before the universe, when darkness is on the face of the deep, as it says in the Bible. Before the creation, there is no universe, there are no created beings, and therefore there is no God, there is no creator yet, you could say. There is only a formless reality, which is the backdrop of all things, and is our truest nature. It is who we are and what we are right now, but also when the universe isn't here. Before I tell you this story, I need to put something on the table, which is my ego. So I really don't want this story, this video, to be about inflating my ego like with a tire pump. That's not why I'm doing this, and yet if there's any weaknesses in my ego, any flaws, any holes in my ego that are craving to be filled, then they will latch onto this experience, and will latch onto me making a video telling you about the experience to try to fill those holes, to try to inflate my ego, pump up the wounds in my self-esteem. So if I had any of those weaknesses in my ego, it will want to do that. And guess what? Guess what I have? Lots of weaknesses in my ego, lots of cracks and empty, little holes and things that are yearning to be special and to be seen and adored and all that crap. Okay, so I want to put that right on the table because that's not why I'm making this video, and I'm going to be keeping an eye on that part of me because I don't want it taking over or getting in the way here. That part of me, unfortunately, existed before this experience of enlightenment, you could call it, but it also existed after the experience of enlightenment. In fact, like I just said, in some ways, my ego got even inflated by the experience. But in other ways, it kind of got deflated. So it's a weird bag of tricks, right? That's the ego. It's weird. It's full of tricks. So why am I telling you about this, if not to inflate my ego? There's two reasons. One is about me. I'm starting a channel. I've got a dozen videos or so. I'm going to be making a lot more. I'm going to be putting myself out there, and I'm going to be controversial because I'm going to say things that are kind of going to piss everybody off. I think I'm not going to fit into this pigeonhole or that pigeonhole. I've got a really unique perspective that I've been building for 40 years, and I'm going to start sharing it. So I'm telling you this story so people who might end up watching my videos can find out a little bit more about who I am and where I'm coming from. This story is pivotal. Okay, so this is one of the biggest things that ever happened to me, and in fact, I often think it is the only important thing that has ever happened to me. This story I'm about to tell you. I often think that I have only 2 coins in my pocket, 2 gold coins. It's the only wealth I have. And one of those coins is this experience, and the other coin is the experience I had on my 16th birthday when I suddenly understood that I am God and you are God and all things are God. Those 2 experiences are my only 2 gold coins. By the way, I've already made a video about that first one if you want to watch it. So one is to establish some credibility about who I am and where I'm coming from. But then the other reason is all about you, not me. It's if you're a seeker of truth, if you are a seeker of knowledge about the mind, about reality, about the nature of consciousness, about God, about what is prior to God, then this video might be useful to you. I have something to say about that. I don't have a lot to say about most subjects. I don't have much to say about them, but I do have something to say about a very narrow group of topics, and this is one of them. Because I've dedicated my life to this. Or my life has dedicated me to this. I'm not sure which one it is. One thing I want to make clear up front is that I'm talking about, in this video, I'm going to talk about a reality that is present right now. It is present in you. It is present. That doesn't even make any sense. There is no you and me in this reality. There is no form. There is no time. There is no space. There is not even being. There are no things that are in this reality. Nevertheless, this reality is present. And I'm going to give you I'm going to tell you a story about it. The thing that distinguishes me from an advanced teacher, which I am not, and I'm not going to claim that title here. The thing that distinguishes me from an advanced teacher is that a truly advanced teacher doesn't have to use words to communicate this to you. Because honestly, words cannot reach this reality. And a true teacher would communicate it to you through their presence, through their being, through a nonverbal transmission, which is not in my power to do because I'm not one of those people. This was a gift to me, and it was a big one, and I want to share that gift with you. So that's what I'm doing in this video. All right, so like I said, this experience happened when I was 17 and living in an ashram, which is a yoga retreat center. And this was a serious one. There was a serious discipline. You're supposed to get up at 3 a.m. to meditate for an hour. And then there was an hour and a half of chanting. And then there was breakfast. And then you worked. And then there was midday chanting. And there was an evening program and meditation and chanting. And then you went to bed at 9-ish or so. There was no TVs, no radios, no music, no cell phones. If you had books, they should be spiritual books, not, you didn't see magazines, Vogue, you didn't see stuff like that. So all of that worldly stuff was not present in the ashram. You were expected to be celibate. You were expected to be disciplined in your speech. You didn't gossip and hang out and party and there was no drugs allowed, no smoking. So, it was a place of discipline and austerity. It was also a place that had tremendous energy, tremendous meditation energy that, for me, being kind of a sensitive person, it would hit me over the head. Like, I'd get walloped when I'd walk into different parts of the ashram where that were especially sacred, where the only thing that happened there was meditation and high-level practices, when you'd walk into those spots, I mean, I felt like I had to almost swim through the energy that was so strong there. That's the environment I was in. How big was this experience? I would say one way to say how big it was is that I got an announcement the year before from Hindu gods that I was going to have the experience the following year. So I had a dream that I was walking along a river in Austin, Texas, and I saw an image of Shiva hovering above the river with a blue aura, glistening flame of blue light around him. And then he transformed into Ganesh, the elephant face god, also hovering, sitting in lotus posture, blue light. And then I saw him and I went, whoa, look, it's Ganesh. And instantly he was in front of me and he told me something. He said, and this is where the ego can get inflated, and we're not going there, okay? But I'm just telling you the story. He said, in your past life, you were a high being, but in this life, you fell from your high state as a child. But when you are 17 years old, something, your meditation. And when he said that, I became absolutely ecstatic. In the dream, it was like someone telling me I'd won the Powerball lottery and had been given the nectar of immortality on the same day. Okay, so it was like, in the dream, I was overwhelmed with joy and ecstasy at what he had said to me. But as I just indicated, there was a part of what he said to me that was clipped out of the dream, almost like a video editor had come in and just cut. When you're 17, blank your meditation. What about my meditation? What meditation? I barely begun meditating. I had only started being able to meditate like just around that time when I was 16. So I didn't know what it meant. I talked to a monk about it. He said it sounded like a real dream, a real dream. In in the path of yoga, dreams are considered to be sometimes messages. Sometimes it's just noise of the mind, off-gassing thoughts or whatever. But it's possible to also have a communication that comes through a dream. I didn't really know which one it was, but I found it very interesting. It's the only time I'd ever dreamed about a Hindu deity. I had grown up in Texas. My family and extended family were all Christian. Hindu deities, although I had moved to India to be with an Indian guru, it wasn't what my mind was filled with. It's not what my memories were filled up growing up with Ganesh and Shiva. Okay, so it was unusual for me to have that kind of dream. Oh, I remember when I told the monk that the dream had said I was a high being in a past lifetime and I had fallen in this lifetime. He thought that didn't make sense because children don't fall. Children are innocent, right? They don't fall. So he thought that part sounded weird, but the rest sounded possibly legit. But I don't agree with him. I think children do fall. I think most children fall. You can see it happening in real time. When children are born, they are effulgent. They are in bliss. I mean, they get cranky when the diaper gets full or when they get hungry. But they're full and they glow with spiritual energy because they're fresh out of the oven, right? They just came here from the other side. They're often, when they start to be able to talk, there's that period around 3 and 4 years old where they'll say really strange things because they can now talk. They have a vocabulary, but their mind is still connected to a bigger reality. So they might start talking about who they were in the past, or you're not my mommy. They can say all sorts of strange things. They might see things that other people don't see. But then something happens, right? They shut down. So I think most kids fall. It's rare which kid doesn't fall. So I disagree with that monk. I think that monk was probably thinking, fall means, oh, you broke your vows and had sex with someone, because that's how a monk falls. And no, I didn't do that. But we lose touch with the bigger reality, I think, as human beings as we grow up through childhood. Anyway, fast forward a year later, I'm 17 years old, I'm in India, and when this experience happened, one of the craziest external dramas of my life happened at the exact same time. I had a secret girlfriend in the ashram. We fell in love the year before. I looked into her eyes one day. I didn't know her. I just was talking to some teenagers. Teenagers all hang out in the ashram. This was the ashram that was in upstate New York, not India. And all kinds of people would come to visit there. The place would swell up with maybe 10,000 people. I don't know exactly how many. And lots of teenagers were there. I met a teenager, and she looked at me, and I saw sparkles coming out of her eyes, and I felt something in my heart, like sparkling, like effervescent in my heart, in my chest. And I just kind of walked away like, holy crap, that felt good. And then I was like, I don't want to go talk to her again. And I talked to her again, and she looked at me with this big smile and the sparkles, and next thing I know, I'm freaking in love, right? I had a total teen crush infatuation on this girl, but then I was told, it became known that I had a crush on her, and I was told not to have a relationship with her, that if I wanted a girlfriend, I could leave the ashram, but I was on tour staff, which meant wherever the guru went around the world, I went with her. I wasn't just there on summer break because my parents had dragged me there. My parents weren't there. I had come there. I had been fortunate enough to be accepted on the tour staff to travel with this guru because I had a genuine desire for enlightenment, which she saw in me. And it was very unusual for her to let teenagers come with her like she did with me. But she didn't have a choice because I didn't have a choice. I was coming, No choice. I was coming. If I didn't, there was no plan B. There was no plan B. So I was told from upper management, if I wanted to have a girlfriend and live a normal teen romance, then I needed to do that not on tour staff. That it was okay if I wanted to do that, but that's not what someone on tour staff is about. We can't have teenagers making out and sneaking around or whatever. So that broke my heart. Okay, so then that was the first time I ever experienced heartbreak. I was like, how can my physical body hurt this badly because of an emotional thing? It was blowing my mind. It felt like there was a truck parked on my chest. And I was genuinely puzzled. How can it hurt physically? This is just an emotional thing. How can I have physical pain in my chest like someone had hit me there with a baseball bat 10 times? It didn't last long, the breakup. It was too painful for both of us. We started sneaking and seeing each other. And then, guess what happened? She got taken on to tour staff, which meant she wasn't going back home to her home in America at the end of the summer. She was going to India. And so was I, because I was on tour staff. She got taken on tour staff along with me. So for a year, we had this secret relationship. And we weren't actually being physical. It was very spiritual and pure. We were totally freaking head over heels for each other, but we didn't even kiss. We would sometimes hold hands. That was risque. When we held hands, we were really pressing a boundary there. We were both super into spirituality. And somehow we never got caught. We would meet in all sorts of places. She was super intuitive. I was super intuitive. So we could kind of look at each other and be like, and somehow we knew what the plan was. And we would meet secretly. We felt guilty about it, but also something seemed to be supporting us doing that. And again, like I said, we never got caught, even though we were in a busy ashram. And how did we not get caught? It's kind of unbelievable in retrospect. At the end of that next year, okay, how crazy do I want to make this story? I guess I'll go ahead and make it all the way crazy. So at the end of that next year, I had a friend in the ashram, dear friend, who was extremely psychic. And he had been teaching me how to use those abilities, because in the first reading he ever gave me, he said, you have these abilities too. Do you want to learn how to use them? I said, yeah. And he taught me. And so we would do stuff together. At the end of that summer, he got a message psychically that I was supposed to consummate my relationship with my girlfriend, if you know what I mean. And I was like, wow, that's a cool reading. That's what every 16-year-old, what was it, 16 still? Or was I 17? It might have been 17. Anyway, that was an awesome reading. It was like, yes, he was getting a message from our spiritual guides. It's time to consummate the relationship. So we arranged that she and I went to a motel nearby outside of the ashram. We consummated our relationship. We fell asleep. And in that sleep, I had a dream where a car pulled up in front of the ashram. It was my guru, the head of the ashram, the chief monk, the one who had let me come on tour, the person who was my spiritual authority. Her car pulled in. I ran over and opened the door for her. She stepped out. She looked at me and she said, I'm going to call this woman Jane, okay? My girlfriend, I'm going to call her Jane. She looked at me and said, leave Jane, and then walked away. And I was like, Gah! I had that dream after I had just consummated with Jane, okay? I didn't know what to make of that. But life was busy because we were all getting ready to go to India. I was troubled by this dream, but I didn't have much chance to see Jane. I think I told her about the dream and it disturbed her too. Something seemed off. Since we'd consummated, something had felt, there was a disturbance in the force, okay? Something felt different, and that dream was freaking me out because, like I said, in this path, in this spiritual path, the guru sometimes comes to you in a dream and gives you messages. And that sure seemed like one. It wasn't part of a longer dream with all kinds of weird stuff happening. I was in deep sleep. The blackness of deep sleep suddenly opens to this dream that lasts like 5 seconds with that one message: leave Jane. Okay? So it freaks me out. I go to India ahead of a lot of the tour staff. Jane hasn't come over yet. While I'm in India, getting settled in, I have another dream. And by the way, after that first dream, I had kind of complained to my guru mentally. I was like, if that was you really telling me that was really harsh. You told me that in a really harsh way. Come on, man. Like, ouch. So anyway, while I'm in India, before Jane has come over, she's supposed to be there in a few days, I have another dream. It's exactly the same. The car pulls in to the ashram. I run over, open the door. My guru steps out of the car, looks at me. But this time she says, give up your attachment to Jane, and then walks away. So she gentled it out a little bit. A little bit, you know what I mean? It was still like, it felt like a bomb. I mean, it woke me up. It was so scary. Give up your attachment. I was like, give up my attachment. Does that mean you have to break up with her? Can I still be with her and have no attachment with her? I'm going through all those exercises. That's probably why she told me the first time, leave Jane. To make it really clear. Because she knew I was going to try to find some way around it, right? Jane arrives. And the ashram's real busy because, the whole tour staff's arriving. We're preparing for this huge festival. Jane and I try to meet each other a couple times, but every time we meet each other, we immediately get intruded upon by random people who didn't know we were there, but they just intrude on us by accident. And that had never happened before. And it only started happening after I'd gotten this message to consummate the relationship, and then immediately after that, break up. What the heck was going on here, right? It was, I was in denial. I knew what was going on. The message had been given to me twice. I could feel it in the air. Okay, I didn't even need a message. I could feel it. She felt it too, but we both didn't want to let go. It happens one night that we both worked late setting up this huge hall for this big festival along with 100 other people, and it's like maybe 2 a.m. and I'm calling it quits for the night. And then she's in the same hall. We're just like telepathically linked, and we somehow exchange a message, and we both leave, and we both walk through the darkened paths of this beautiful gardens in this ashram in India. And we make our way to this private little spot. There's this huge, like 15-foot rock wall in front of us. And there's a path going like this. There's a building behind us. There's bushes behind us, and then a building. So get this. We sit down. We take each other's hand. We start to talk. And the moment, we don't even get a chance to barely say a thing. And I hear someone approaching. Because we're sitting right in front of a path that goes like this. I hear someone approaching, and I look, and I see the flashlight, and it's a security guard. And I'm like, oh, we gotta go. So we get to go this way, because that's the only other way. And guess what's over there? Another security guard happens to be approaching from this direction. Well, our only other options, there's a wall in front of us. We can't climb that thing. Behind us is bushes. And then there's a path next to the building that's right there behind the bushes. So we turn to start to sneak through the bushes, but guess who's coming straight towards us along this path along the building? Another security guard. So there was three avenues of escape, and 3 security guards all happened to converge right on our position independently of each other. This was not planned by them. They just all happened to come at the same time, converging and blocking us from escape. And when they got to us, they were pissed off. These were visitors to the ashram who had been given the seva, or the job of being security guards, probably to keep teenagers from making out at 2 a.m. in the gardens, and other things. So villagers might try to sneak over the wall and steal stuff, or who knows what. So there was security. They converged on us. They were all shocked, especially since Jane is actually ethnic Indian. Okay, so they saw this white guy and an Indian girl alone in the garden, where in an ashram where even outside of the ashram, I could have gotten beat up for that in India, especially back in the 80s when this happened. It's a different culture. They have different standards around sexuality and teenagers. And I mean, it's probably changed a ton since we've been influencing them all that time. Probably very different now. But back then, I could have been beaten up for being inappropriate, they would have thought. And so that's what these guys thought was happening right there. They started yelling at us. There was a chant going on, a 24-hour chant going on. And I will never forget, one of the guys said, "What are you doing? Is this chanting? Is this chanting?" And I was like, "No, it's not chanting. I'm trying to talk to my girlfriend and you don't understand." I didn't say that to him. So anyway, they broke us up. We went our separate ways that night. The next day, when the sun came up and I walked through the ashram, every Indian ashramite seemed to know. And I was persona non grata. Okay? I knew lots of Indians in the ashram, beautiful people. There was a lot of teenagers visiting there who were super interested in me and wanted to talk to me because they saw me as this American yogi meditator, and that it was really fascinating to them. They looked at me with disgust. All of them, except for one. There was one guy who was, I still have a soft spot in my heart for him, because he was the one guy that didn't shun me. So everyone shunned me, and me and Jane realized it was time to break up. These weren't coincidences. Somehow we were supposed to consummate the relationship, maybe to finish off the karma or something, and then it was supposed to be over. We reluctantly followed along with that, but there was still so much energy going back and forth between us whenever we'd see each other, and she seemed angry at me for some reason. And I got called into the office of the main ashram manager, who was a Western guy, and a guy I really love and respect. He had been told, of course, that Jane and I had been caught in the gardens at 2 a.m. And he asked me, he was just kind of friendly smile, relaxed, said, "Hey, so what's going on with you and Jane?" And I was like, nothing. We're just friends." And he's kind of leaned forward and he said, "Ellis, you and I are just friends, but we don't meet each other at 2 a.m. in the gardens." And he went on to say, "Look, man, I don't have a moral problem with you having a girlfriend, but you can't meet at 2 a.m. in the gardens. That's not what the ashram is about. If you want to hang out with her, you need to do it in public where everyone can see you." He didn't know that I'd already been told by a higher up manager than him that I can't have a relationship with this girl. So everything conspired and it was time to break up. But it was super painful. The attachment was still there. All the Indians hated me, except for that one guy. That's when I had the highest experience of my life. It was right in the middle of that setting of this bizarre, weird drama. I go to an early morning chant. And mind you, I'm hardcore. Okay, so even though I had a secret girlfriend, I'm still hardcore. I go to this early morning chant. Sun hasn't come up yet. I'm reading this book called the Yoga Vashishta. It's an ancient text, a non-dual text. Wild book, really recommend it. At that time, I had removed the mattress from my bed, so I slept on a blanket about this thick, and then it was on a wooden frame, flat wooden frame. So I slept so that I could wake up more easily and do practices. I would try to repeat the mantra at every waking moment when I wasn't needing to use my mind for something else. So hardcore, right? And I'm reading this hardcore book, and that's kind of the setting. I'm sitting in meditation before the chant starts, before dawn, one of these mornings, right around during all this drama, and I contemplate a line from the Yoga Vashishta, something non-dual. I don't remember what it was. And something happened. In that moment, it felt like my mind popped up out of my body, out of my personal space, and went up into another dimension that is formless awareness. And formless awareness is not possible to imagine because it's formless. And the only thing we can imagine is something that has a form. So sometimes we'll try to imagine something blank, like we'll imagine a blank. But that's not what it was. It wasn't a blank. It was formless, infinite awareness. Utter bliss. Pure bliss. Its nature is bliss. Okay, it doesn't feel bliss. It is bliss. Okay, it doesn't have awareness. It is awareness. It is the source of all awareness, including the awareness of me looking at the camera and you looking at the image. The awareness on both sides of this camera is nothing but this awareness that I'm talking about. It is the same awareness, and it's the awareness in all beings, and it is the awareness that exists before all beings. I saw all of this, okay? And when I saw it, something weird happened in my body where it felt like a bunch of ghosts. That's the word that comes to me. Flew out of my body. Like almost like in a ghost movie where you see a ghost flying through the air in a haunted house. That's what it looked like. I could see in my mind's eye these ghosts flying out of my body. They had been like banished by this connection. I connected to this reality. all these ghosts of all these personas. One of them was my mom. That was the one I noticed the most. One looked like my mom. Don't know exactly why. Maybe you do. I don't know exactly why that my mom would have been in, like her psyche was in me and it was flushed out along with all these other things. And in that moment, I just knew, I just was this thing, but without any thought and with no form, pure infinite bliss and awareness. And in this, it looked like a black void, although at the time I didn't even really recognize that it was black because there is no color. But in my memory, the color I give it is black, if that makes any sense, because there was no form. So there was this infinite expanse that looked like it had a black background. Sort of like outer space looks black, but there's not actually something black there. There's not a wall in the back of outer space that's been painted black. It just looks black because there's nothing there, okay? So that's what this was like. Except there's no stars or planets or anything. It was just absolute void that wasn't bliss and awareness. But in that empty expanse, I saw what looked like ovoid, egg-shaped, shimmering, almost like opal, like a black opal, but it had layers. I could see through it into layers, shimmering colors moving, almost like lightning moving through clouds on a dark night. If you see lightning kind of in the distance moving, illuminating clouds and moving around inside the clouds. That's what I saw, this egg-shaped, ephemeral looking, shimmering, opalescent thing, okay? And when I saw it, I knew that was what we call the universe. All of it. If you believe in multiple dimensions, all of them were there in that thing. I do believe in multiple dimensions. That's what spirituality is. Multiple dimensions. It just means there's more, there's other dimensions. There's other radio stations on the dial, not just this one. Okay? And what I'm describing to you right now is another dimension, although it's kind of like the dimensionless dimension. It's the one that's before actual dimensions. Sorry if this is getting crazy. I saw the entire universe. And I understood instantly that it was not real. I saw that the entire manifestation of form, space, time, planets, beings, stars, galaxies, universes, dimensions, all form was nothing but a thought. It was a thought form that had appeared in awareness. This infinite, formless awareness that is prior to thought. And that exists during thought, and that exists after thought. And while the thought is there, it is what sustains the thought. I believe that all things that exist, all that is nothing but the thought of God, you could call it. God is thinking about a universe, and that's what we call the universe. It's not real because it's just a thought. And yet, from a position within the universe that sure as heck feels real, that's a trick. Because even when you have a dream at nighttime, you fall asleep, you dream that you're in the office and your coworker's saying something to you, that feels real too. And in fact, it feels exactly the same amount of real as our waking state feels real. It's only when we wake up from the dream that we go, oh, that was not real. That was a dream. Well, in this experience, I was outside the dream. I had woken up outside of the dream. I was that vast formless awareness. So from that position, I could see that the entire manifest universe was nothing but a dream, a thought, an experiment. Yeah. For about a week, I had access to this non-dual place. I could turn my mind towards it and it would like stop my mind. It would destroy my mind. I would know the unreality of the universe. Not think it, know it. I would turn my mind, my attention inside up towards this gate, and I would just be there. And and when it happened, everything in my body would shift. Any tension in my body would drop and relax. Usually there was a big sigh. And all tension would instantly leave my body, and I would just feel this intense bliss. I once asked my current spiritual teacher, why is that dimension so blissful? Because I didn't understand why would it be so blissful. And he said, because it doesn't die. Interesting. One aspect about it that becomes very apparent right away is that it's permanent. And that's what makes it real. Gosh darn it. All form, the entire manifest universe is impermanent. That is seen in that when you, as that formless awareness, you see the unreality of the manifest universe. And the reason it's unreal is because it's transitory. It's temporary. It appears and disappears. It changes. This formless awareness does not appear or disappear. It was never born. It is not in the category of things that are born, live, and die. It's not in that category. And that's hard for us to wrap our minds around because we only know things that are created or appear, exist for a bit, and then they disappear. Even the universe is going to do that. But this formless awareness prior to the universe doesn't do that. It's not in that category of things. It's not a thing. That's why it doesn't arise, exist, and it subside again, because it's not a thing. It is prior to things. It is the thing that allows things to appear. So I would connect into it randomly throughout the day. Instantly, all tension, all ego and personality would vanish. My body would feel like this empty thing, an empty thing. And I just would know that everything was unreal. I wouldn't even have called it my body. I didn't even know what this was. I didn't know what my guru was. I was there to be with my guru. And when this experience happened, I was like, what's that? This is supposed to be learning from that. What's that mean? I would pass by statues of gods, including Ganesh and Shiva, and I'd be like, the gods that had announced that I was going to have this experience the year before. I would look at them and just be like, they're not real. They're not real. My guru's not real. This isn't real. The closest I could come with my guru would be like, I guess she's someone who knows about this. So I would be in bliss. And I want to tell you some of the weird things that would happen during this week. After that week, that portal kind of closed or appeared to close, and I didn't have ready access to it after that. But during that week, I did. So one thing that was happening was I was walking around in complete bliss most of the time. And it was so strong that if I relaxed my face, if I didn't make an effort to put on a mask and I just relaxed and let my face do whatever it wanted to do, my face would go into a massive smile, a blissful smile, as if I had just dropped acid in ecstasy 45 minutes prior. Okay, I just was walking around in bliss, and when there was no one around, I would just be like, let myself just let my face go and do its thing. But when someone would start to approach me on the path, I don't want to look like I'm insane. So I would try to look normal, even though inside I wasn't feeling normal. That was one thing that would happen. Another thing that would happen is it was hot, extremely hot. I was in Maharashtra state near Mumbai, used to be Bombay. This would have been October, and it was hot as heck. Okay, and I'm sensitive to heat. I do not like heat. I sweat too much, more than most people. Hate heat and humidity, and that's what we had. When I would tap into that place, I don't know why. Just doesn't make. I have no explanation for this, but the heat my body was feeling would instantly flee. It would just vanish out of my body. I would still feel my body just like normal, but there would be no heat. And again, I don't know why. Sleep was the same thing. In the evening, after a long day, I would start to feel sleepy, which kind of feels almost like a shadow, a thin shadow settling over my mind. If you pay attention, you'll see that this is what happens to you too. When you start to fall asleep, it's like a thin shadow comes in, and then it gets darker and darker and darker, and then you're just in blackness, and your mind isn't there recording anymore until you wake up or have a dream. During this week, whenever I would start to feel sleepy in the evening, when I would tap into that spot, sleep was gone. It would literally look and feel like a shadow lifted off of my body. I was just in a state of like perfect awakeness. Wasn't hyper. It was like a steady state of awakeness. And then the sleep would start to creep back in. As I kind of like, as my attention slowly shifted away from that spot back into the world, then the sleep would start creeping back in. And then if I put my attention back up, sleep gone. But what would happen is, as it got later and later in the evening, the sleep would come in with more urgency. It would become harder. It would eventually take over, and I would fall asleep. Another interesting thing is that during that week, if I repeated the mantra, because when you're in ashram, everyone was given a mantra. That's like a word that you use, that you repeat, to put your mind into a meditative space. The word is supposed to have some power to it, because it's been used by yogis for thousands of years were all seeking God, seeking reality, and so that practice has infused those words with energy consciousness. And so I used the mantra. I'd been using a mantra for 2 years at that point, and I never really felt anything when I used a mantra. I knew that they were supposed to have power in them, but I never felt the power. It just felt like another word, as if I was repeating the word peanut butter and jelly. Repeating the mantra Om Namah Shivaya, or Om Guru, or Soham. Those mantras didn't have any different feeling to me than peanut butter. But during this week, I had to stop, because I remember I was working one evening in the kitchen. I repeated Om Namah Shivaya, and immediately it felt like my mind was getting pulled down into my chest. From up here, pulled into my chest into, don't know what was there, a void, blackness, an expanse of no mind. And I was like, whoa. And I tried it again several times. Every time I repeated the mantra, it had huge power for some reason. When I was in that state, the mantra had so much power. Way different from peanut butter. It had a totally different effect. It's another one of those things that I have no idea why that happened. It was during the same week that I was walking through the gardens, and I saw my guru and a bunch of monks. They were looking at orchids that gardeners were putting in the trees. My guru looked over at me, and she's maybe 50 feet away from me. And she followed me with her eyes, and I was looking at her. And then she said, out of the blue, and this was a random, she went, how is Ellis doing? I said, good. And she went, very good. And I was like, okay. She sees what's going on with me. She always saw what was going on with me. This guru was a woman. She could see, okay? She could see super clear, super easy, apparently. And she saw that I was in some state, because she didn't normally do that. She didn't normally look at me and go, no, very good. Again, and I'm looking at her going, you're unreal. But I guess you see, like I'm seeing, maybe more than I'm seeing, but that's all, that's what you are. You're a seeing and I'm a seeing. Another thing I want to mention, another interesting thing during this week, is that all the Indians were still shunning me like I was a pariah. I had become untouchable. And man, Indians are really good at that, man, because maybe the caste system or something, like it went through the network. The Westerners hadn't heard about it. So the ashram was perhaps half Europeans and Americans and Westerners, and then half Indians at that point. The Westerners hadn't heard through the grapevine that I had been caught with a girl in the gardens. But man, all the Indians had, and they were still shunning me. And there was this crazy paradox for me that I was having the highest spiritual experience of my life. A spiritual experience that is, other people have it. I know that because I read other people's descriptions. Like, that's it, man. They had the same, they went to the same place. But it's uncommon, it's a rare experience. And that's where my ego can try to grab on and build a little house for itself. That it's uncommon to have this experience. And it is uncommon. If it's reassuring at all, I'm horrible at lots of things that you're probably extremely good at. And I mean, I could make a list, okay? I don't have an easy time with life in the world. It doesn't make sense to me in a lot of ways, and I'm not very practical, and I don't have structures that allow me to work in the world easily like most people do, okay? But I do have this connection, which most people don't. And so that's cool, because then I can share something that might be interesting to you, and then you guys all share stuff with me, and we both learn and grow together. That's the way it's supposed to be, in my opinion. But it was a irony to be walking around trying to hide the smile because I'm experiencing this non-dual bliss. And I'm looking at Indians going, you detestable man, how could you? You're just here to have sex with our Indian women, It was ironic, highly ironic. Another interesting thing that happened during this week is that I got a little cut on my elbow and it got infected. And in India, especially if you're a white guy, Westerner, whose immune system is not used to their microbiome, it's easy to get infections there, and they get serious really fast. And this infection got really serious really fast. And the reason why I went we had a clinic and a doctor, an MD, Western MD in the ashram. The thing that took me there is that I saw a red line coming up my bicep. And I was like, that's weird. It looks like it's coming from the infection up my arm, and the infection was super tender, and I was feeling like I had a fever. So I went to him, and he said, I need to poke around in there a little bit and see what's going on, and it's going to hurt. I was like, okay, it's going to hurt. Okay, let me just check in. And I go up into non-dual. Everything is unreal. It settles into my body. All tension goes out of my body. He gets some metal, like pick instruments, and he starts opening it up because he needs to see if there's anything in there, I guess. And he opens up this thing while I'm sitting like this. He's right over there working on my elbow. And it is like white hot pain. I was aware of white hot pain, almost like electrical, almost like a car was driving through my nerves coming from my elbow. Somehow it was squeezing its giant mass into my nervous system and going up my arm. A white hot electrical car. Okay? And yet I'm connecting in, and there's a part of me that just remains utterly calm. And it's the part that understood that this is a dream, and not conceptually, knowing. I'm just watching the dream doctor take a dream pick, stick it in the dream arm that's dream infected, and there's some dream white hot pain. That's the dream. And there's just a part of me that remains utterly calm with that. And when he was finished, he was shocked. His words were, there's not many people who would have sat through that without screaming, or something to that effect. So some version of that. That's what he said. So I liked that moment because it confirmed for me that this just wasn't all just in my head, you know? That I actually had an infection in my arm, and that an actual doctor told me that most people would not have just remained calm and relaxed while he was poking into it, because when an infection gets to that point, it gets extremely painful and tender. So that was like an external confirmation that I'm glad it happened, because it just made it a little bit more real to me, to my personality, to my doubting mind. It made the whole thing a little more real. Another really interesting part of this was a series of interactions I had with a guy in the ashram who used to harass me and punch me and insult me and come up into my face doing this all the time. If you're from my ashram days watching this video, you know who I'm talking about. And I love this guy. He was like an older brother. He was like, God bless him. I'm sure he's a totally different person now. But he was young at the time, and I was young. I mean, he was in his 20s. I was a teenager. He was this tough New York Jewish guy. His way of showing affection, if he didn't like you, he ignored you. If he liked you, he'd mess with you. And he was also on tour staff, so we traveled the world together, and I worked with him, and I actually admired him and respected him in so many ways. Amazing guy. But he would nonstop F with me. Okay? Punch me, on the arm. It would hurt, but he's not beating me up. He might slap me. He's always trying to humiliate me and just cause problems and just mess with me. And he was the dude who's getting up there right in your face, and I'm kind of like, eh. And he was intimidating. He was very intimidating to me. I remember once when I was left the ashram to go visit my mom, and I'm sitting in an airplane on an aisle, and a guy walks towards me on the aisle, and out of the corner of my eye, he looked vaguely similar to this guy in the ashram who was not on the plane with me, but just my mind vaguely thinking it was the same guy. I went like this, because I thought I was about to get smacked. Okay, so that's the effect this guy, even when I was out of the ashram, away from him, I'm still flinching from the guy, okay? During this week, when I was in that state of emptiness and this is all unreal, and I'm in bliss and emptiness, man. The emptiness was just as beautiful as the bliss. There was a vast emptiness, which is like peace. Another word for peace is complete security, utter fearlessness. There's no fear, because you are the real. You are what is permanent. And you're not thinking this, you just are it. You know it. Without thoughts, without words, without language, without form, you are it. You know it. This is our true nature. All of our true nature. It's the true nature of reality. During this week, whenever this guy, we'll call him Bill, whenever Bill would come up and start messing with me, I would still find myself reacting like trying to get away from him and try to not get punched. But there would remain some sort of emptiness inside of me, some sort of lack of ego, lack of playing with his game, playing along with his game. He being the aggressor, me being the victim. I wasn't the victim. There was no persona in me. It was empty. Mostly. I mean, wisps of it would try to get in, but mostly I was just empty. Empty, vast, infinite awareness, bliss, and peace. And here'd come Bill, and he would mess with me. And the crazy thing that would happen is every single time during that week, I think it happened 3 times, he would mess with me, and instantly something bad would happen to him. The one I can remember is that he was walking backwards, messing with me as I'm walking along a path, and he bumped into an old lady and tripped and fell down on the ground and made this old lady stumble. And everyone saw this, and he was being all cocky and rude and obnoxious, and he almost knocked an old lady over. And he was so embarrassed. He had to apologize to her, and then he got completely flustered and knocked off center. And I just kept walking, and I just was that calm emptiness. I just watched it. I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to defend myself. It's like the universe defended me. And that happened at least 2 more times. And I don't remember the details of the other incidents. This is like 40 years ago. I just remember thinking like, wow, every time he does this is something weird happens. I think another time he got hit with something, like someone bumped into him with a cart or something, right when he's messing with me. And again, it flusters him, knocks him off his shtick, and embarrasses him. And I've done nothing. I'm just walking. I'm just being that calm, empty. And what it made me think, my theory about that is that when we don't have any ego, trying to control life and control other people, and we're just empty, then the universe. If we're so empty that we are not protecting ourselves, then the universe, God protects us. The mirror, this great mirror, which we call the world, shows us a different response. It protects us. It handles it for us. If we give everything away to this higher reality, then the higher reality handles things. That's my theory. Of course, another massive thing that happened is that I became extremely confident about spiritual things. When it comes to social interactions, women, I can collapse into a quivering ball of no self-esteem. I can get triggered if people are being aggressive to me and all this stuff and that stuff. Like I said in the very beginning, I have plenty of ego weaknesses. But when it comes to spirituality, this experience, it just gave me a non-ego confidence. There also gave me some ego stuff, like I've talked about. But there's a part of me that's just completely confident about spirituality. Doesn't mean I know everything about it, but I could sit in front of any teacher, and I could be in front of the Dalai Lama or the Pope or anyone you name, and I don't feel outgunned. Okay, so I think most teachers, I have something to teach them. And that's not coming from ego. It's just coming from beyond ego. At least that's how it's been, you know? Maybe it'll be different in the future, but that's how it's been my whole life since this experience. At the same time, there's a part of me that's very afraid of this formless reality. I am both deeply attracted to it. I pray to it every day. And yet, there's a part of me that is afraid of it because to connect to this formless reality, you have to give up form. And do you know what giving up form feels like? It feels like death. To access this place that is already here, you have to surrender mind to it. You have to surrender being a thing and knowing things. That's probably the best way to put it. You have to surrender being something and knowing something. And that feels like death to the part of us that is identified with form and with knowing. This formless reality knows, but it doesn't know as a being. It is before beings. One description I've heard of used to describe it is it is all the way back, and it is a back with no front. That probably doesn't make any sense. But anyway, it's scary. It's scary to go into that because you're letting go of literally everything. Everything must go. It's a closeout sale, y'all. Everything must go before you can enter that room, that vastness. The only way to approach it is through surrender, giving away everything. And whatever's left is it and you. It is you. There's only one more incident I want to describe to you that happened that week. And then I think I might be all out of things to say about it. And I'm sure I'll remember other ones because I just remembered one while I was recording this. And I hope I'm not leaving out anything really juicy. But there is one last really juicy one. And that is, I was heartbroken when it became obvious that I needed to break up with Jane. The moment that connection happened, like in a split second, and all the ghosts fled my body as I was sitting there in meditation early morning before the chant started, my attachment to Jane vanished, instantly gone. And I've gone through breakups since then, and none of them have ever, well, there's another one that was like that because it was also came out of a spiritual experience. But usually when a breakup, I'm in pain for like 6 months minimum. Especially the first 3 months feel like agony, like the truck is parked on my chest. Then it slowly gets better, and it's very slowly. And 6 months later, I'm still in pain, but still processing. Maybe a year later, maybe I'm fully over it. With this one, instant, finished. My attachment was utterly gone from the root. Pulled up from the root, thrown out the window, gone. There was no pain. There was no longing. There was no attachment at all, because it's all unreal, and I knew it in my bones. And so there was no heartbreak. The heartbreak had been there a split second before, and a split second later, it was gone. And I saw Jane a couple of times in the ashram, and she looked at me with heartbreak in her eyes, sadness, and then anger, because she could see that I was not in heartbreak along with her. And I saw anger in her face. There's one particular incident I want to describe to you. It is still one of the most powerful things that's ever happened to me. It was during the evening arti, which is it's a worship ritual, sort of like, in a church, like Catholic priests might wave incense and repeat Latin stuff. And, it's something like that, but Hindu. And they start this off with a huge cacophony of instruments, cymbals clanging, beating gongs. There's this drum that was at least 6 foot high. There's this giant circular drum. And they would beat this thing. It sounded like thunder. It would echo off the mountains in the distance. It sounded like thunder. It was so loud. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. And ringing these big brass bells, and people had cymbals that they're hitting with, little brass cymbals in their hands. And it goes on for like 5 minutes. And I don't know exactly what the purpose of it was. I think it's to kind of like awaken the gods and goddesses, because we're about to do a worship, and to get everyone really present and to really shake up the energy. And so I was sitting in the courtyard, the epicenter of the whole ashram, where the energy is so powerful. And they were doing this beginning of the arti, hitting the drums and bells and cymbals and, conch shells too. Blowing these conch shells, which make this booming, almost like trombone sound. And it's very powerful to sit there with all of that noise around you. And there I was, and I was connected to the non-dual, and I was sitting there, and I felt like I felt like my body was made out of air, like there was nothing to it, like I was like made out of mist, and those sound waves were just flowing through my body, as if there was almost nothing there, as if it was just empty. And this roaring sound moving through my body. My ex-girlfriend, Jane, comes walking into the courtyard, and she sees me right away. And she has to walk right past me, and she comes walking right past me, just a couple of feet away from me. And she looks over at me, so much heartbreak and like deep sadness. Touches my heart right now just thinking about it. She looked at me with this just like devastation in her eyes. And I sat there as this empty thing. And in that space that I was in, when I looked at her, what I saw was pure bliss. She was that void. She had become the form of this teenage girl who was devastated. But what I saw, I could see the devastation on her face, but what I knew was that she was pure bliss. Even in that moment of devastation, she was pure bliss. The devastation was a mask. It wasn't real. The only thing that was real was the bliss and the awareness. And that moment was just unreal, unbelievably just off the chart. It was just not even a human experience. But guys, that is the truth of all things. That is the reality of you and me right now. And we pretend like it's not. Because we're playing a game. But the reality is that that's all that's really happening here. Is pure bliss, pure awareness, pure perfection.